Have you ever just, stopped and wondered what you're really made of? I mean, not just the obvious stuff like cells and tissues, but the actual atoms and molecules? Well, today, we're going to peel back all those layers of biology and explore the incredible chemistry that powers every single living thing. We're going from stardust to the living machines that we are. All right, so here's our game plan. First, we're going to ask a really simple question. What really separates you from a rock? Then we'll dig into life's secret chemical recipe and meet the 4 crucial building blocks. After that, we're going to zoom way in on proteins. These are the master molecules. And we'll wrap up by seeing just how incredibly fast enzymes work. They're basically life's accelerators. Okay, let's kick things off with a question that sounds simple on the surface, but is actually pretty profound. We all know we're different from a rock, right? Obviously. But what is that difference when you break it all the way down to the absolute basics, to the chemical elements themselves? No, really, think about it for a second. If you could analyze every single element in your body and compare that list to a chunk of the Earth's crust, what would you even expect to find? A totally different set of ingredients? Maybe some kind of special life-only elements that you just can't find in rocks?
Well, the answer is pretty fascinating. It turns out it's not that we're made of different stuff at all. The very same elements you find in a rock are also found in you. The real crucial difference is the recipe. It's the proportion of each ingredient. Just look at this table. Your body is absolutely packed with carbon and hydrogen, while the Earth's crust is totally dominated by oxygen and silicon. It's this simple shift in the ingredient list that separates a living, breathing person from a lifeless stone.
So how in the world do scientists figure out this chemical recipe for life? You might be picturing some super complex, high-tech machine, but the basic method is actually surprisingly simple. Let's walk through how you'd figure out what's inside a piece of living tissue.
Honestly, it's a process you could almost do in a kitchen. You basically make a slurry. You take some living tissue, say a piece of liver, you grind it up with some acid, and then you strain that whole messy mixture through a piece of cheesecloth. It's kind of like making a really weird scientific soup. And what you're left with are 2 very different parts, 2 chemical fractions that tell us everything we need to know.
So on one side, you've got the liquid that drips through the filter. That's the acid-soluble pool. It's full of thousands of tiny little organic compounds called micromolecules. But the really interesting stuff, the real prize, is what gets left behind in the cheesecloth, the acid-insoluble pool. This is where you find the heavy hitters, the giant biomacromolecules. And this is where we find the true building blocks of life. So now it's time to meet the stars of the show. That gunky stuff left behind in the cloth is where all the magic is. And it's made up of just 4 main types of these big molecules. These are the components that build literally everything that makes you, you. From the muscles that move you to the DNA in every cell. And here they are, life's big 4. First up, you've got proteins, the workhorses that do pretty much everything. Then you have polysaccharides. These are your complex carbs used for energy and structure. Next up, nucleic acids, the keepers of all our genetic information. And finally, lipids, which build critical things like cell membranes. Now, let's see what each of these is actually built from. First up, we have amino acids. The easiest way to think of these is like a set of 20 different Lego bricks. By linking these little bricks together in all kinds of different sequences, our bodies can build every single protein it needs to function. Next, we've got simple sugars, like glucose. Now, when you link these guys together, you create these long chains called polysaccharides. This is how plants store up energy as starch, and it's how we store energy in our muscles and liver. Then you have lipids. Now, these aren't giant chains like the others, but they are absolutely essential. They make up fats and oils, yeah, but their most important job is building the flexible membranes that surround and protect every single one of our cells. And finally, we have nucleotides. You can think of these as the letters in the alphabet of life. By stringing these fundamental units together in a very specific order, our cells write the instruction manuals we all know as DNA and RNA. Okay, for the rest of our time here, we're going to focus in on just one of these groups, proteins. And why proteins? Well, because they are the true workhorses of the cell. They do almost everything. And all of their power comes from their incredibly complex 3-dimensional structure. So let's see how that structure gets built level by level. So it all starts here, at the primary level. This is nothing more than the specific sequence of amino acids all linked together in one long chain. You can think of it like letters spelling out a word. The order is everything.
If you change just one amino acid, you can completely change what that protein does.
But that long, straight chain doesn't stay straight for very long. Almost immediately, parts of it start to twist and fold into these simple, repeating patterns. This is the secondary level. And here you start to see shapes like the alpha helix, which kind of looks like a spiral staircase, or the beta-pleated sheet, which looks like a folded fan.
And this is where the magic really happens. At the tertiary level, all those helices and sheets fold up on themselves, and they create a really complex and totally unique three-dimensional shape. It's often compared to a hollow woolen ball. This final 3D shape is absolutely critical. It's what gives the protein its specific job. Without this shape, it's just a useless string of amino acids.
But wait, there's more. For some proteins, there's one last level of complexity. The quaternary structure is when multiple, individually folded protein chains actually team up to form one giant functional machine. A perfect example of this is hemoglobin, the protein that carries oxygen in your blood. It's actually made of 4 separate protein subunits all working together in perfect harmony. So why does all this complicated folding matter so much? Because that final 3D shape allows for an absolutely incredible variety of jobs. Proteins aren't just one thing. I mean, look at this list. They are structural materials like collagen. They're enzymes like trypsin, hormones like insulin, defenders of the body like antibodies, and transporters like GLUT4. Every single one of these unique jobs requires a unique shape.
Okay, for our final topic, we're going to look at what is maybe the most mind-blowing role that proteins play. We're talking about enzymes. These are special proteins that are biological catalysts, and they accelerate the chemical reactions inside our cells to speeds that, frankly, make life possible in the first place. So the key idea here is that an enzyme is a biological catalyst, and it's a total specialist. It finds the one specific chemical reaction it was designed for, it dramatically speeds it up, and then, and this is crucial, it comes out completely unchanged, ready to do the whole thing again, millions of times over. And when I say speeds it up, I'm not talking about a little boost. Let's take one enzyme, carbonic anhydrase, as an example. Without it, a certain reaction in your body might happen a few hundred times an hour. But with that enzyme present, that same reaction happens 600,000 times every single second. That's an acceleration of 10 million times. It's almost unbelievable.
So how on earth is that kind of speed even possible? Well, this diagram shows the secret. You see, every chemical reaction needs a certain amount of energy just to get started. Think of it like having to push a huge rock up and over a hill. That hill is what we call activation energy. What enzymes do is basically act like a tunnel that goes straight through the mountain. They dramatically lower that activation energy barrier, which makes it incredibly easy for the reaction to happen over and over and over again.
So we've seen that all life, from the tiniest microbe to a giant blue whale, is built from the exact same fundamental chemical toolkit. And that leaves us with one final huge question. If we are all assembled from the exact same parts, what is it that writes the unique blueprint for a person versus a plant? Where does that incredible diversity of instruction manuals come from? Well, that is a story for another